wonderful organization that I'm with. And I raise my hands to Q and all those that are supporting her in this wonderful endeavor. Gela Kasla. Thank you.
Marilyn, thank you so much. Yeah, just thank you. Just regrounding myself in that opening, I am genuinely a lot less stressed out after hearing from you, Marilyn. Thank you for that. Gave me a moment to breathe. So, Taz here. Oh, one thing, we are now streaming to YouTube. Our wonderful tech support and other people in the background, shout out to Fenrir, to Tracy, to Taz. I saw you doing little things there, and to Jenna Reed for figuring out everything that was going on in there. Anyone who's done a virtual event, I'm sure you know, it is always running around feeling like you just don't know anything. Anyways, so hello to everyone on YouTube. If you're watching there, sorry for the delay. You caught the tail end of a beautiful welcome and introduction from Marilyn Dalton from the Wewakai Nation. So we had some tech snafus. It is what it is. I am going to share a few words about my perspective on this project as the project lead, and then I am going to very happily pass it on to Taz so that I can continue to catch my breath. So this project, which is, as you may have noticed, called the Disability Arts and Activism Archive, is, first of all, funded by a Canada Council of the Arts grant and supported organizationally through Kickstart Disability Arts and Culture. I am incredibly grateful to Kickstart for housing this project. They have really let me do what I want to do, and really from the beginning have said, this is your project, we're just holding the grant for you, because it was a grant for an org specifically. Jenna Reed, who is with us, I think, has been a admin support and a bit of a mentor in what is my first large grant project. It's pretty daunting, and I'm really grateful to her. And I don't want to describe Jenna too much without her input, but she has previously described herself as a reluctant academic, I think is the words that she has used. And as a non-academic, I appreciate and respect that. I have plenty of academic friends, but I am myself actually a high school dropout. And for me, something important about this project is that it is not academic. It is not housed in any post-secondary institution. It is community-based and led. I myself am a disabled artist and sometimes activist, as much as that word is complicated for a lot of us. I think that it's really important to have community-led projects like this, where we can share our knowledge and our artwork and our histories in a way that isn't gatekept. This project, which I think Taz will speak more about than I'm going to right now, is a oral history and artwork project to start. I was fortunate enough to interview a series of artists and activists and organizers about different parts of their lives and their work in anything, really. There was a lot of focus on specific artworks and arts admin, and grassroots organizing. And so I interviewed a series of people. And then I did something that every time I've described it to someone for the first time, they were like, have you done something like that before? I did an open call for a series of artists to read or listen to the interviews that were conducted and create artwork in response to those interviews. We're calling those artwork interpretations. I think that an important part of history is how we engage with it and how we adapt it into our own knowledge and through our own lenses. And so we had some lovely artists who are on screen with you here now, interpreting the interviewees' artworks. I'll just say briefly, I will introduce them later, but our interviewees today are Reagan Shrum and Mickey Aurora, and our artists were Kani Nakashima Ochoa and Sarah Spilchin. Those are the folks that you're seeing on screen, and I am so grateful to everyone that was involved in this project for their trust. There was a lot of faith put in my intentions, and I'm really honored that people trusted me with their histories and their artwork and finding a home for them. So thank you to you folks, not to embarrass you on screen right now. And with my last few moments here before introducing Taz, I just want to note that this project does have an ethics protocol. Fenrir, who is our tech, but was also my co-researcher and access support person, helped me write an extensive ethics protocol. And the two pieces in it that are most important to me are the fact that this project has a goal of being trauma responsive rather than being trauma informed, and that we recognize the full humanity of everyone that is involved in this project. That second piece is really important to me. It's very obviously connected to the idea of being trauma responsive. But I find that often in a lot of projects, grant or otherwise, we are very deadline focused. There are deadlines to meet and final reports to write. And a lot of this project has been prioritizing people's well-being and people's lives ahead of the deadlines that we might have set. And something that was difficult about this project was applying those to myself. It's very easy for me to prioritize other people's well-being. I think that that's an ethic that I carry in my entire life. But it's a lot harder to do it for myself. And one of the key principles of disability justice is sustainability. So this project has been a massive learning curve in figuring out how to respect my own humanity. And I'm honestly just really grateful for everyone else who was involved in this project, guiding me through that and facilitating my own ability to do that. So yeah, that's a lot of thank yous, because this project was a real team effort despite feeling very lonely at times. So with that, I want to introduce Taz, who has been amazing. Let's just be frank here. Taz has been brilliant and has really helped with the project in general, and also getting this event together, getting the website up in time for this event. So Taz was the lead web designer and web developer. They also co-designed the project logo with one of the other project participants, Valen Onstein, who is not with us today, or might be in the attendees. I'm actually not sure. Anyways, I'm going to read Taz's bio. But before I do, can I ask the tech to please put the website link that you have in the chat? Oh, Taz, you're on it, honestly. Perfect. I just navigated away from my notes, but Taz's bio here, and then Taz, I'll let you take it away. Taz, who uses they, them pronouns, is a multifaceted creative and spoonie. A web designer, singer-songwriter, multidisciplinary artist, DIY maker, and gardener. Taz explores many passions through a neurodivergent and queer lens. They are an immunocompromised disabled person with ADHD, anxiety, depression, Crohn's disease, and arthritis in their 20s who dreams of rad, kinder futures, thriving, nourishing communities, plants, colors, magic, and cats. Taz is of Quebecois and Doukhobor descent, and they were born and currently live on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Taz.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Q, for the outstanding, amazing introduction. I also have lots of positive things to say about Q and this whole project. But yeah, so Q asked me to speak as the lead web designer, both about the project and the about my experience with disability arts. So, hello, I'm Taz Soleil, also known by my musician name, Taz Solace. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a 27-year-old white person with around shoulder length, brownish purplish hair, with currently a netted rainbow shirt on and some lilac purplish fingerless compression gloves. And there's a string of photos and a little bit of art behind me, including a picture with me and my cat Cappuccino, and a neon rainbow sign that is lit above me. So, yeah, I've been the lead web designer for the Disability Arts and Activism Archive project, and I've been working on the project since around 2022 after Q reached out to me back in 2021 during the grant proposal process. For me, disability, neurodivergence, and art have been linked my entire life. My brother, Misha, shout out, who's 3 years older than me, was diagnosed on the autism spectrum and with ADHD back in the 1990s. His entire life, his strong special interests have been cars and drawing. He loves collecting every book, magazine, and image of cars possible, and has drawn countless cars in his life. Anything with from sketches of cars he briefly saw on the street to imaginative concept car 3D designs and full illustrations. My mom being a social worker when we were younger, and me and my brother being kids, the narrative around autism and disability that we got mostly related to liberal ideas of acceptance and inclusion, and seeing my brother participate in activities with like nonprofit organizations or public school supports through government funding. Though I've always been passionate about, um, though I've always haven't had an activist spirit, um, from a young age, it wasn't until my late teens and into adulthood that I actually discovered the existence of radical, disabled, and neurodivergent communities. And it's only in hindsight that, as my brother required a lot more support and focus from my parents to keep up with the ableist demands of public school systems, stuff like my ability to sometimes thrive in classroom settings when engaged as a participant in enjoyable subject matters, counterbalanced and sometimes masked challenging challenges of neurodivergent traits of mine, like my dysgraphic handwriting, chronic procrastination, and social difficulties. My family, managing the extra strains of ableist society and being socialized myself with gendered expectations imposed onto me, I took on extra responsibilities from a young age and ended up thinking it was a more viable career pursuit option to go into the sciences um, instead of, until the extra course load in high school became too much for me. Soon after starting my high school art class in grade 11, I felt so much more aligned with the arts in general and with just a taste from that class, um, that I was exceptionally allowed to transfer to the advanced art class in my high school, which was part of the International Baccalaureate program, spanning the last 2 years of high school. Though this program was exceptionally challenging and non accessible, um, it was the self-guided structure with the ability to deep dive into subjects and research that I was personally drawn to, um, my understanding and appreciation for, and my worldview of the arts greatly expanded and has ever since. Creativity has always been foundationally important to me. Only after struggling getting diagnosed with ADHD at 23 and having access to specific programs did I realize how much my neurodivergence is linked to my creative mind and process, despite the mental hurdles I face to create. I was a teenager when my anxiety and depression first developed. I started noticing IBS symptoms and I discovered my queerness. When I first understood the term queer, it immediately felt perfect to encompass many aspects of myself, including feeling like a weirdo, an outsider, and my sense of style, which follows my unique love of all things colorful. I loved the platform Tumblr, which became a source of solace and further channels to more in depth learning and engagement with communities related to activism and social justice at the time. The platform also offered more supports and information than I got when seeking help for my mental health through walk in clinics, the only doctors I saw before adulthood, whose responses ranged from dismissing my mental illness symptoms as normal for teenagers or lacking information to provide me access to age appropriate community mental health programs. Like one doctor who suggested I just go buy a self help book at the bookstore. Through my own research, I did find Pine Free Clinic in Vancouver, which I was able to access um, a free clinic, where I was able to access a free counselor there later in my teens. But that important community clinic unfortunately closed down just a few years later. The foundation of where I learned the positive, powerful impact of supportive communities and finding a sense of belonging was actually through early YouTube vlogger communities online. I occasionally made videos myself. Eventually, I built a new creative outlet for myself through songwriting, as singing had already been a lifelong passion. Video editing skills led me to posting short song practices on Tumblr, and I later challenged myself to learn some basic music production skills after having the foundation of the video editing, and also with the help of a year of piano lessons as the foundation. Piano lessons became a struggle for me, and when they started to struggle a lot, I quit. And like with so many skills I've tried to sustain in my life, once the novelty and momentum wore off, it felt like an internal battle against a brick wall would stop me from continuing any further. Due to my depression and that brick wall feeling, I found myself losing the ability to find pleasure in most of my interests and lots of my favorite media at various points as a teenager. When reading fiction stopped being enjoyable and accessible, I sometimes started to read nonfiction and mostly queer anthologies and poetry, which has been one of the most accessible reading mediums for me. As I entered adulthood, I learned about Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasinha, a disabled queer mixed race femme poet and author, and began reading some of their books. They have been and continue to be one of my biggest references to disability justice movements, crip culture, and the list goes on. By that point in my life, my anxiety and depression had progressed throughout high school. I had I began getting medicated once I got a family doctor at age 18. My IBS included acid reflux. I had chronic pain, primarily in my hip, and soon after I began performing more of my own original songs, my acid reflux became so severe I had to take a break from my main passion, singing. Knowing about disability income assistance through my brother's access to it, I applied for PWD myself in 2014 at 19, partially with the social activist reasoning of it being the closest current option to universal basic income that I believe everyone should have the right to do. So I've also used that same mentality to encourage many of my other disabled friends to reach out and access PWD and have been thorough with answering any questions and supporting them however I can to lessen the inaccessibility of the PWD process in BC for them. I leaned into other hobbies, art mediums, learning about herbalism and DIY gardening for self healing, and told myself that I would take like at least a year of pause for healing. I pursued countless resources and requests and requested many tests from my doctor to try to figure out what was going on with my body. And my soon retiring doctor was just tired of investigating really further into my condition at that point. But by age 21, after finding a great and affirming doctor who was only accepting trans and non-binary patients at the time in her practice, a digestive flare-up that I thought might heal soon on its own turned out to be Crohn's disease, an inflammatory bowel condition that for me included complications like arthritis in my hands and feet, as well as a couple of years where almost any amount of fiber would later on cause me digestive pain. I could no longer comfortably eat things, for instance, raw fruits or veggies or anything whole wheat. It was only after trial and error with multiple medications and being prescribed an immunosuppressant medication that I still have to take that the majority of my Crohn's symptoms went into remission. As someone who's had setbacks at various times to expressing my creativity in some of my other chosen fields, such as singing and music due to acid reflux affecting my voice, executive dysfunction and anxiety hindering my ability to sing, write, perform, arthritis affecting my ability to improve my piano practice, and some of my other crochet, textile, sewing, those types of hobbies, sometimes challenging with arthritis flare ups, among others. I found designing online to be one area that sometimes, in some ways, could reduce some of the challenges I come up against in the physical world. As a low income, disabled, neurodivergent person, customization and creativity and creatively adapting are skills I have honed through my life. When it comes to the digital realm, whenever I got new to me technology, I would always tinker around the settings to figure out how I can adapt the settings like color palette, screen brightness, icon layouts, and all other options to optimize for my uses and needs. This is one tendency of many that led me to designing. For this project, Q showed me a couple of examples of websites that had some of the functions and styles of information that we were envisioning for the archive. The main example that had the most features and accessibility functions was unfortunately the Eugenics Archive of Canada. In my own research, due to the subject matter of this project, just finding examples of disabled history, databases, archives online were few and far between. When I did find something similar, a good amount of the websites were hard to navigate, not meeting basic accessibility standards, were overly academic, or felt too much like a stale educational course. Some of us have had to go through those before, who understand. So, for my initial web design and concept brainstormings and design goals, they were basically developed out of what I didn't want for this project. Instead of boring, dull, medical, sterile, and unintuitive, I wanted the design style to be engaging, dynamic, fun to explore, to really showcase that disabled content, art, people, history are truly important, worth listening to, and to reflect back the vibrant, valuable people, communities, and care that we and disabled people are a part of. To get to these goals, I know my personal, sometimes flashy color palettes were not ideal for this project. For example, they could cause sensory issues for some people, or if not done correctly, could feel infantilizing, which, of course, some of us as disabled people have faced far too often. I ended up taking reference from the Disability Pride flag for the design color palette of this project. The flag was designed and created by Anne McGill, with important meanings and symbolism for each part of the flag. It was updated by Anne in 2021 with feedback from other disabled community members to create a more sensory-friendly version of the flag's design. I won't describe the full symbolism of the flag, though there is an entry in the timeline of the project's website. But the colored stripes, included in the flag, represent the spectrum of disabilities in the disabled community. I chose the soft yellow, green, blue colors, and the pale and dark gray tones from the flag to be used in the website design for a cohesive theme while considering needs such as adequate functional contrast, sensory issues, and colorblind clarity, for example. And of course, for the first and foremost, being a website project for and about disabled people, finding many of the previous examples of disability themed websites lacking basic web accessibility standards before I had even started my own research into the subject felt disheartening. I've already had an interest in accessible and universal design, but as a self-taught web designer, in preparation for this project, I did further homework to learn a broader scope of all the ways that web accessibility can and should be implemented. Starting from the foundation of the design concepts is how it should go. Instead of a simple box to check off, or a last-minute afterthought, such as the popular web accessibility features like UserWay, which is a widget that's more common on websites lately. As awesome as they sound and as easy as they are to include, I quickly found that they can be the opposite of accessible for some users and can hinder accessibility features that are part of the website code or clash with programs and settings that disabled people have already set up on their devices. Genuinely planning with accessibility in mind, it quickly became apparent how the false idea of one size fits all or only one solution can be. Thankfully, when it comes to the internet, there are many design choices and settings that can more easily accommodate a variety of flexibility and user experiences and needs. Factors such as accessibility options led me to choose a newer program called Webflow, which is meant to be a low or no coding required system to design websites. I know tools designed to meet specific accessibility needs are often ironically inaccessible due to barriers such as the costs or lack of widespread availability. I was pleasantly surprised when I noticed during this project there have been some specific tools designed for accessibility needs that are starting to become more available to more platforms and open source software, thus giving more people the opportunity to access some of these tools and engage with online content. I will skip through some of these. I can send links and resources later if people are interested, but basically, because of this current early version of the website, unfortunately lacking the full scope, does unfortunately lack some of the full scope of the accessibility options, design, and features that are planned for the full project launch. This preview was intentionally originally designed as a template for the web developer instead of as a full functional site. But to accommodate personal losses in the project team and struggles, including all things going on with the world right now, we decided to pivot in the last month to have something, at least a sample, available to be launched on schedule for today's event. Despite the last minute deadlines in the end, I do want to genuinely highlight the awesome work, care, and intention put into the accessibility and flexibility and planning of this archives project, with major support by Q, the project lead. This project contained access intimacy, care linguistics, and fluency, concepts talked about in Leah Lakshmi's book, The Future is Disabled, embedded through this project, being by disabled people for disabled people. It's not lost to me that in this past couple months, I myself have been entrenched in disability care work, with my partner's chronic back pain flaring up, requiring visits to the ER, and my beloved 22-year-old cat, Cappuccino, with late-stage chronic kidney disease and seizures, who's been in my life since I was 7 years old, requiring a long week hospitalization and later on lots of care in her final few weeks, before passing last Sunday, April 16th, as I was in the midst of putting together the final touches of this project for the web design. So, with the disabled experience being a complicated mix of challenges, gifts, surprises, and required flexibility, I'm super proud of this project that the Disability Arts Archive and Activism and Archive have created so far, as well as all the projects and many more that will grow in the future. With that being said, check out the website and the various links listed. Enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Taz. I appreciate you editing things. I really, yeah, I appreciate you being responsive to my time note. Unfortunately, because we started late, things are a little different. Taz shared their talk with me beforehand, and so I knew that they had to skip a few things that were really lovely and whatnot. But yeah, again, that flexibility and responsiveness is a big part of anything that disabled people are doing, obviously. Anyways, this awkward transition right now is me saying that we've been going for nearly an hour and we are going to take a small break right now. It is only going to be a 10-minute break rather than the 15 minutes we had planned. So if anyone wants to go stretch, do what you need to do, and we'll be back at 5:06 Pacific time for our panel. I will screen share the website so that you all can see a little. If you don't go visit the link, you can see a little preview. So I will spend a portion of my break setting that up right now. So before I go, a brief description of what you have on screen right now is the artwork response gallery for our oral history artwork project that we're wrapping up with this event. And specifically on screen, you have an artwork by S.D. Holman titled Persimmon Blackbridge Portrait, and it shows one of our interviewees, Persimmon Blackbridge, wearing a respirator mask, and she has her long dyed hair in a braid down the front of her, and she's standing in front of her studio, which is gorgeous. And then beside that, you have Sarah Spilchin's Mend to Reconstruct, which was in response to Reagan Schrumm's interview. And the artwork is a flat beaded rectangular piece that is black and white checkered with some gorgeous colorful beadwork across it in rainbow beads, and it is displayed atop a colorful quilt. So that is what I am leaving you with while I take my own break. just wrapping up our break. If anyone is there but not on screen yet, you're fine. But I was going to say you have another minute, but then the clock ticked over. So hence the awkward, you're fine. Oh gosh. I appreciate the access workers as an occasional access worker myself in different roles. And I also appreciate everyone's grace with my frazzled brain. Everyone is being very kind, and it is very nice. Thank you. We have 4 panelists, and 4 panelists are on screen. We have our ASL interpreter back on screen as well, so we can get started again. Kami, you scared me. They said we have 4 panelists on screen, and then you disappeared. Just teasing. All right, so let us introduce our panelists by letting them introduce themselves. Just a reminder, panelists, and I will put this in the chat as well in case you don't have the document open right now. But when you're introducing yourself, let's get your name, your pronouns, a brief visual description of yourself, whether you're an interviewee or an artist, and anything you like, a little fact you want to share about yourself or an experience you've had. Let us, I'm just going to have to pick on someone. I'm very sorry. Kami, I've already picked on you once. Let's go again. If you can introduce yourself.
Cool, sounds great. This is Kami. Thank you, Q, and thank you everybody for being here. My name is Kami. I use all pronouns. I am a racially ambiguous person in my 20s. I have a round face and a soft, fat body. Today I'm wearing a black knitted toque that's rolled up in the very millennial way. I have on some plastic glasses that are sort of the color of tree bark with lichen. I have on some pretty large beaded earrings that have little strawberries on them on a white background. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and it has the Timmy and Tom Nook characters from Nintendo, and they in unison are saying capitalism is a cage. Behind me, I have, there's like a bone colored wall, a glowing blobby painting, and then a bit of the couch that I am seated on. What else do I have to say today? Yes, I am an artist in this project. I responded to Mickey's interview, which was really exciting. And yeah, I'm an immigrant settler here. I am joining today near the site of Yelshin, which is this Hautmishnichim name for the English Bay Beach area. I am a disabled human being who's been on these lands for about 5 years now. And yeah, I'm really delighted to be here and sharing space with other disabled folks. Should I maybe pass it on to Mickey? Check. Thank you.
Sure. This is Mickey speaking. I am a late 20s woman that uses she, her pronouns, and I'm wearing a camo print baseball cap and a silver brocade blazer, and there's a beige zoom blurred background behind me. And one experience I've had is I was really inspired by this text called Formulary for New Urbanism by Gilles Ivan, and it's all about how the hyper banal psychogeography of the urban landscape is causing us to have this really limited view of what it means to be human. So I'm working on an immersive installation that's inspired by what I felt when I was reading that, and that's going to be coming up in the next few years. I was an interviewee in this project also, I should say.
Awesome. Let us pass it on to Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Can everybody hear me? I use she, her pronouns, visual description. I have a hard time knowing that I exist. So I have dark brown hair with lots of silver in it now. I'm wearing giant gray headphones. I have white skin, a very small nose, brown eyes, dark transparent blue glasses. I'm wearing a dark gray sweatshirt. There's a piece of moose hide behind me on my chair from my mother. And in the background, there's a whole bunch of stuff, a green wall and a ton of framed artwork and some beads hanging on a bulletin board. And yeah, I was an artist in this project. Something about me, I spend a lot of my days caring for a almost 5-year-old girl who is non-stop talking. So that's what my life is about right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Reagan, of course. I think you go next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Reagan Schrum. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a white individual in their 30s. I have long brown hair, turtle shell glasses. I'm wearing birch earrings and a checker box dress that actually reminds me of a lot of Sarah's work, and that's why I wore it today. My background is of different paintings, including and a needlepoint that I actually did. I am an interviewee in this project. I guess I'm a queer and disabled individual, mostly working as an arts administrator, but also an artist. And I live on the unceded and traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, currently known as Victoria. Check.
I have not been saying my name every time I've been speaking, despite asking everyone else to do so. So my apologies for that. And of course, this is Q saying that. So thank you all for introducing yourselves. We are back on track for time. So any future time struggles we have will be on my shoulders entirely. So I have a couple of questions. I find that often when we have panels, a lot of panels that people do in general, we try and get in a lot of questions, and I don't want to do that. I want us to be able to take our time on both of these questions. So what this is going to look like is I'm going to say the question, and then let's go in the same order that you just introduced yourselves in. So Kami, again, you're unfortunately going to have to go first. For the second one, how about we go in reverse order? So first time it'll be Kami, Mickey, Sarah, and Reagan, so that everyone has a chance to speak. And then after your first time speaking and everyone has an opportunity, if there's anything that someone said that you want to respond to, then we will have an opportunity for everyone to respond a little bit as well, so that it can be a bit more conversational. And then we will move on to the second question. So as I said, we just have a couple here. The first one that let's just get into it is what is the importance or value of disabled knowledge and art And you can speak in the context, like whatever context you wish, but this was written with the current kind of regional, national, and global social and political circumstances. So things that you're seeing in the world, what is the importance of disabled knowledge and art? Kami, if you want to take a moment to respond to that.
This is Kami. Yeah, thank you, Q. I appreciate the smaller number of questions so we can get kind of more into them as we can. Yeah, I mean, disabled folks have always found creative ways around ableist barriers. I think disability and creativity really go hand in hand, in large part because of that. I think, yeah, art is a really fantastic sort of environment where I think at its baseline, it's anti-capitalist in that we make things not to be laborers, not to generate profit, but we make things to hopefully soothe or lift our spirits or create community. And so I think that, yeah, these ideas of art making go really naturally through disability justice or disability communities. I think, yeah, I think there's lots of ways that that could be applied. I mean, I've definitely found, for me personally as an artist, art to be survival. Oh, I forgot to add in my description that I may be glancing down to the side, or you might catch some noise, which is my dog Dino sleeping next to me, who might wake up, especially as we get close to 6 o'clock, which is dinner time. So yes, if there's some rustling or if I'm looking distracted, that is why. But yeah, no, I think, yeah, there's lots of contexts that it could be applied to. For me personally, art has meant survival. It has meant whatever level of sanity might look like for me at the moment. And it's, yeah, I think being disabled and being in that identity in its political sense is resistance, and I think art is resistance. Yeah, I think even in the art world, there's a lot of visual primacy, and I'm sort of hoping to move away from that in my own practice and in the environments that I'm in. But I think, yeah, there's a lot to be said about it, and I'm trying to find the right focus of it. But I think, yeah, disability, art, resistance, and survival. And I think I'll leave it there for now. Check.
Thank you. Mickey, this is Q. Mickey, before you start speaking, I'm just going to paste the question in for the attendees, because someone has asked to be able to have it in the chat. So there we go. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Mickey here. And I think that in the past, there used to be this archetype of the artist who is a bleeding heart, and they're, suffering for their art, and they're maybe a starving artist. And in 2023, a lot of artists want to kind of challenge that notion by being super well adjusted to the hyper-capitalist art making industry. They want to prove that art is a valid profession, and they want to challenge these old stereotypes. And so the role of the disabled artist today is so important because it creates a kind of counterpoint for the person, the kind of the figures in the art world that we've now been told by the media to see as emblematizing what an artist should be in the modern age. So the disabled artist creates a counterpoint for that, because their actual body and their mind prevents them from entering that space, for a lot of us at least, where you're churning out 25 paintings a month just because that's how much demand your collectors have for your work. So I think it's just super relevant right now. And we are lucky to have disabled artists.
Thank you. Yeah. You wish.
Sarah here. It is my turn, right? Okay. Yeah, building on those points, of course. Amy had said that like art and disability go hand in hand. And I think that that's really important to highlight because a lot of poor people are disabled through capitalism, right? And so poor people themselves have to be creative in order to survive. So mutual aid networks and, you know, how can I make something different for the 10th meal in a row of potatoes that I have, you know, those kind of things. Or like who is getting the excess money in our circle this week? Because, you know, this person has a toothache and of course teeth are luxury bones. So, you know, we can't get that covered by medical. And the whole starving artist being the counterpoint of the well-adjusted, demand-driven artist really hit home for me because I'm primarily like a bead worker. So I make beaded earrings and there's such pressure to produce and have like cohesive collections that have these deep meanings. And I just don't have the mental capacity to work like that. So I think that it's important that disabled folks like normalize that like maybe production-based goals isn't attainable for everybody, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're less of an artist or less deserving of money for your effort. It just is what it is. Check.
Yes. Yeah. I'm so thrilled with this panel. Reagan, take it away.
Yeah, I'm just this Reagan. I'm just nodding my head, just resonating with so much that everyone has said. And for me, I think really art making is a way to build community, right? I don't know about the rest of the people in this panel, but like sometimes it's hard to be in spaces where it's an all disabled space. Or an all like intersectional space. And I find like looking at people's artworks or in exhibition spaces or learning about them through Instagram or other mediums, I find I can then, you know, start to talk to people online or start to develop and then find resonance, find community through getting to know people. My knowledge of disabled artists is now become like across BC, which is really amazing. And I think part of it too is, you know, art allows us to build worldviews and let others see our worldviews. So part of it, and I know this is a thing that I feel like all disabled folks do, is, you know, teaching non-disabled people about ableism, about what we go through. And I think sometimes that is part of an arts practice too, of it's a way for non-disabled people to kind of get to know what people are experiencing and do it through a way that may resonate with them more than, you know, trying to fight for things like basic income. That doesn't seem to capture sometimes for folks, but somehow art does, and using that in a way that can help gather support. Check.
This is Q. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, as the facilitator, trying my best not to like jump in with my 2 cents. But you all are bringing up some amazing points, and I'm really glad that things like class and education and whatnot have been touched on. Yeah. Does anyone want to, speak in response to what someone else has said so far? I see a finger from Sarah, I think.
Sarah here. It's just reacting to what Reagan just said. The whole idea of like sectioning your communities, and there may be some overlap. For instance, I have a few friends who are watching, and we became friends because of knitting and like socializing that way. And then it grew into support in times of need. Like my friend was new to the city, and because she was a knitter and we knew each other, we were able to help her with meals and help her like get to the hospital and stuff like that. And then there's so many ways that art, especially craft art, which is more my practice, leads to a deepening of resources available to you. I'm thinking specifically about things like accessing gender affirming care, or getting an official diagnosis, and all the knowledge that comes from these individual people from other groups that you might not have had access to because it's things that are hidden. You're not going to go on the people with disabilities site, the government site, and be like, find every single piece of information that, say, Taz would have from having been through the process. Okay? I'm rambling now, but check.
This is Q. Yes. If that was a ramble, it was a very thoughtful ramble. Yes, yeah, that those connections and whatnot, really a big piece of disabled knowledge, and the way that art kind of facilitates those relationships is really huge. Does anyone else? We can spend a couple more minutes on this question, or we can move on to the next one. So if anyone else has anything they want to add or jump in on.
Amy here. No, I was just gonna say a lot of these thoughts are leading me to my answer to the next question, so I'm happy to move on. Check.
You here. Perfect. Okay, it looks like folks are ready to move on. So our next question, I will put in the Zoom chat, and one of our techs will put, oh, okay. Well, we love Control Z in this house. I just deleted the questions, but it's fine. Oh, that is the specific private message, and now this is to everyone. So the question is, what connections do you find between disability justice and other groups or movements seeking justice and liberation? A couple of examples you can think of: environmental justice, reproductive justice, racial justice, Black liberation. And relatedly, or if you want to focus on one or the other, a follow-up question includes, what does cross-movement solidarity look like to you in art, activism, institutions, and lives? A bit of a long thing to hold in your mind, but it is in the chat if you need to refer back to it. We were going to go in the other direction this time, but Kami, you said you have thoughts already. Reagan, if Kami wants to go first, Reagan, does that sound good to you as the alternative first person? And Kami, would you like to go first? Getting the thumbs up here.
This is Kami. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. It was just a really good lead in. So thank you, Reagan and Sarah. And Mickey, for everyone's answers have been so thoughtful and awesome, but just following my train of thought. Yeah, Reagan, you had mentioned something about I can't remember how you worded it, but it was like about this idea of like showing up to different communities in different ways as like any person with different facets of identity. And for me, I've been saying this more lately with consideration being like a non-Black racialized person, but a key facet of my work and worldview has been formed or informed by Black feminism. And so in particular, I'm thinking of the Combahee River Collective, which I cite a lot, but they sort of coined, especially Barbara and Beverly Smith, coined the idea of identity politics, which is not how we think of it now, but it's actually the idea that shared identities does not necessarily mean a shared politic, but that within intersectional identities, we can hold difference and still be in community and not have to compromise parts of identity in order to do that. Like certainly as a racialized queer person who is an immigrant and who is bilingual, I find myself having to like check an identity at the door and like leave it behind in order to find validation with another part of my identity. And so I think, yeah, all of this to say that I think there is no liberation without Black feminism specifically, but without cross movement solidarity, as Q worded it. I truly believe that if we are not all free, then we are not at all free. So I think, yeah, I think we can't forget, like, I'm thinking a lot about, I'm trying to remember who talked about this earlier. Oh, when Taz mentioned how a large archive in disability justice or disability communities is from the eugenics perspective, I was also thinking about Nia Lewis curated a show at Grant Gallery last year about the archive of Blackness in Vancouver, and a lot of the archive that they were able to find was through criminalization. So a lot of the images were of incarcerated folks, mugshots, state documents, and of course that relates really directly to disability justice, in the sense that a lot of disabled folks are unhoused, a lot of disabled folks are incarcerated or otherwise criminalized. Yeah, so I think it's something that we need to hold in mind in order to really serve all sorts of people across disabled communities. And yeah, again, art is a big part of that, in that, again, how Reagan said, we can share different parts of ourselves more openly or in ways that are non-verbal or non-visual or non-auditory through art and creative making. So yeah, that is my answer for now. Thank you for giving me the time and space to follow my train of thought. Check.
That was such a valuable train of thought to follow. So thank you for sharing, and for also sharing the origin of identity politics. I think that's something that we can all highlight more often. Reagan, if you would like to go next.
Sure. Yeah, I was just thinking about, for myself, just to start off with, before I really became, I guess, more of an activist within disability justice, it was really from particularly BIPOC folks that I worked with in the arts, who really opened my eyes to what was going on in terms of Indigenous justice, or Black justice, or other racialized folks. So I guess for me, a big part of disability justice comes from these other groups. In terms of, folks within disability communities have been fighting for justice since there were ever disabled folks. But I keep on thinking a lot of my own personal practice is social arts practice. And when you look at social arts, or sometimes it's called community arts, so it's a slightly different thing. A lot of times they trace it to the Fluxus movement of the 1960s, but really, whenever I teach about it to other folks, to me it really started with the Black Panther movement in the States, and I think that is never really acknowledged. But what was done within the Black Panther movement of, getting youth free lunches, that then was co-opted by the American government and taken away, and formed into its own thing. And I think there's just so many times where civil rights, and I come from the US, so I think a lot about US history, but a lot of things, particularly happened because of civil rights movement and Black Panthers, that then kind of spread throughout. So I think it is always important. Everyone is working towards the same, or hopefully everyone is working towards the same thing of freedom, of anti-capitalism, of anti-colonialism. And I think that can only be done in solidarity with each other. Check.
That's really, yeah, I'm like, y'all are great. I love this panel. Mickey, if you would like to go next. I think I might be slightly wrong on that. It might be technically Sarah next, but but we can just switch it up if you're good to go, Mickey.
Totally. Mickey here. So when I think about cross-movement solidarity, one group that I think about a lot is like the group that's operating in an esoteric capacity outside of the Christian hegemony and outside of that dominant physicalist, materialist philosophy, which is basically the idea that the material world is the only thing that's real. And so like anyone that's operating outside that in some kind of esoteric practice, they are outside of the acceptable framework of what we have all collectively in mainstream society agreed to be the norm. And so they're constantly pushing against that and pushing against that constant oppression and that constant perspective being imposed on them. And so it's this group that I think is really primed to be an ally for the disabled community. Because when you think about people that experience, for example, like alternate views of reality that have been kind of marginalized and stigmatized and devalued, and some even experience violence from the medical community for doing things that seem like abnormal or don't fit the norm of how we should be acting. It's the esoteric community and the occult community that can kind of like understand and validate where they're coming from, and also validate experiences that don't fit into the kind of like colonial idea of what normal is, like if people are communing with spirits or things like that. And I know a woman that was recently, like, she had a really intense bout of visions and then was hospitalized, and she was treated really badly in in the mental health establishment by people that kind of weaponized her past mental health experiences against her, like for her past suicidal ideations. And yeah, it's just really important that we carve out a space for people that are disabled but experiencing things that might not fit in with the dominant narrative to be allowed to exist, you know. And there's currently this esoteric renaissance that's burgeoning right now, and that this creates the prime moment for us to be able to support this community.
So this is Q. Thank you, Nikki. Just amazing connections being drawn and lines being linked here. Sarah, if you want to close us out with our first set of responses here.
Sarah here. Yeah, I'm just sitting here nodding. Just, yeah, what they said. Yeah, what they said. I think what disability activists have been trying to do for a long time is say that this is beyond identity politics, because it is like one of almost one human condition that you can have across all other identities. Do you know what I mean? So like, it's by virtue of having a body and a brain, a mind, that you can become disabled. And like, most of us will be disabled by the end of our lives in one way or another. So I think disabled activists giving their time to other causes, especially, is more of an indicator of them giving more effort, because they have sometimes like limited capacities due to their disabilities and being able to participate in these spaces, right? I don't know if I'm being clear with that thread, but like, yeah, you all are very smart.
This is Q. You know, I mostly have my facilitator moderator hat on right now, but I will say that it was Saray, and of course I'm blanking on Saray's last name right now. Obviously, there's no other time I would. But Saray, who is a prominent like disability thinker, let's say, and a Black queer trans artist, has recently been sharing some of his thoughts on this kind of topic of what you were saying there, Sarah, of like moving beyond like the political identity of disability in the way that we like try and share our knowledge and our experience into like understanding debility and debilitation, meaning like I'm not going to get this completely right because I'm very brain foggy and these are Saray's thoughts, not mine. But the difference between debility versus disability is like debility is an ongoing process against the body minds of especially like colonized peoples who have been like inflicted like violence under colonial capitalist systems. But yeah, like framing our ideas of disability in the ongoing process of violence against the land, the water, the air, and our body minds. So I heard a lot of what you were saying in there. I heard a lot of Saray's thoughts in that. So I followed what you were saying is my point here. Well, we are actually just at our point of where we should be transitioning to our Q&A. Saray Jarrell Johnson, Jane Shee, thank you very much for reminding my Civ brain of someone I deeply respect's name. Anyways, if anyone has any final thoughts that you want to share on either of these questions or anything else before we transition to what is officially our Q&A section, but I don't know that we have any questions from the audience. Now is the time. I have a Kami.
Kami here. Thank you. I have one last thought, and then please put me at the bottom of the list when we come to answering questions, because I'm aware of how much I've been speaking today. I'm just going to change my view again to gallery so I can see the interpreters. And no, I'm not talking too fast because I do get ahead of myself if I don't pay attention. Okay. Yeah, so I also was able to follow your thoughts, Sarah. So thank you for checking in with us about that, because I get that it's hard to like get things out the way you want. Yeah, that reminded me of another thing that I wanted to say in my answer earlier, which is like, yeah, a lot of folks, especially wealthy folks or white folks who can live more separately from other racialized people, often see disability as an opt-out. Like if I work out enough, if I have enough money, if I have this and that, I'm good, I'm safe, and that's just not based on fact. And so yeah, disability is one of those facets of marginalization that can, like, it's one that you're not born into, so it can change at any time. And I was just thinking about, I go through like hyperfixations with like sometimes like athletes or other public figures. And I was watching a few months ago an interview with Marshawn Lynch, and it was this like very bougie segment where he was like taken to a spa to get like manicures and pedicures, and the pedicurist was asking like, or saying like, oh, feet are so important, like can you imagine like what you would do without your feet? And he just like without missing a beat was like, oh, I would just roll, baby, and like just instantly like answered like the super ableist question with like no problem. And I was just, it just made me think a lot about the like yeah, the visibility of disability in racialized circles and backgrounds of poverty, which he is from. And so yeah, I just wanted to give that little anecdote as we switch over to the questions. Thank you. Check.
This is Q. Thank you for those thoughts. I look forward to watching this event later so that I can have my own thoughts when I'm not in hosting brain. So at the moment, it looks like we have a couple questions in the Zoom Q&A. And so I'm going to pull one here. Kay Slater has asked, and this is a bit of a more extended multi-part question. So Kay, I apologize if we cannot get to all of it. And I'm also just reading it to process it myself right now. So Kay has asked, can y'all talk about how you respond to all of us participating in bidding or undervaluing our practices to get work? Actually, before I read this all aloud, I'm going to send it to the panelist chat so that you can see it as I read it. Okay, starting again. Can y'all talk about how you respond to all of us participating in bidding or undervaluing our practices to get work? Some have to ask for less to keep our benefits for survival, but creating a new norm that capitalism can embrace. How do we fight this as deaf and disabled artists when we're already working within systems that value those of us who are more accessible or more desirable as coworkers? How can we discourage each other from doing work for free within ableism when we are still sold exposure as value? Kay has kindly said we can prioritize another question if we want, but I think this is a really great question. We do have another question that I want to get to eventually. So if we can get 1 or 2 responses, if either of you have like immediate thoughts. I think I see Reagan's hand here. Please take it away, Reagan.
Yeah, this is Reagan. I'm just speaking from an arts administration position, because I've worked with a lot of artists with disabilities, who have been on disability benefits, but otherwise wouldn't want to discuss that unless they knew I was disabled too. But even before that, like whenever I create contracts, or even before I create contracts and talking and emailing or talking over Zoom or in person, I always make sure I ask the person how they want to be paid, in terms of how often, the frequency. So I think this is just a call to get more arts administrators who are disabled within these institutions, even though they're hard to work for. I think there's a lot of benefits to having folks within the system understanding the needs of Mia Mingus's kind of idea of access intimacy, of knowing before, just based on own lived experience. Check.
Mickey, I see your hand, and I would love to hear from you. I'm just going to copy the question into the general chat because someone, oh, great. Of course, I have tech people doing things. I'm so used to being the tech person. Mickey, please feel free to go ahead and share your thoughts as well.
Thanks. It's Mickey here. I think that, like, if it's one thing to have to charge like less than your worth, but like you said, in capitalism, people sometimes will just prioritize a job if someone is charging less. And I think there is this narrative that goes around where it's kind of like, oh, know your worth, you have to charge what your art is truly worth. But I just wanted to put it out there that it's like, if you know inside your heart what your art is worth, and you just need like that money, even if it's less, that there's no shame in like doing that. Like, it's unfortunate that we live in the system, but there's certain things that it's like, even if it's our deal, that doesn't mean that we have to hold that ideal in a sense that every other opportunity we get is unimportant. Just giving ourselves that permission to survive as artists in whatever way we can. When it comes to like getting paid in exposure and stuff, I think that a logical kind of practical way to look at it for artists coming up would be at a certain point, you're going to probably get paid in exposure, and then maybe later on it'll become something that you'll feel like it's not right for you anymore to do. And then at that point, setting those kind of boundaries will benefit your practice. But yeah, there's just no shame, like whatever part of the journey you're on, because even like sometimes the Vancouver Art Gallery, like they take time paying disabled artists like what they are owed, and like they're like out there without money, like starving, and they're showing it like the biggest institution in the province. So it's really like, we're all in the same boat here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a big question. But yeah, thank you for both of your thoughts. I know that I think I can speak for all of us. There's a lot to be said on this topic. But I do want to get to a second question before we wrap up here. And maybe we can just kind of hear from Sarah, and then if we have any remaining time, then we can hear from another person on this question. Sarah, just because you haven't responded to a Q&A yet, and Kami, as you said, prioritizing someone else. So our second question here is from Jay Clover. If one of our tech people could copy it into the chat. Jay has asked, how has working on this project inspired your thinking on disability justice in art? Is there anything you will take away and bring to your future art or life?
Sarah here. Absolutely. If you look at my artist statement for this piece that I created, it's actually right above me right here. You'll see that I said that reading and interacting with the interview between you and Reagan really changed the way I looked at what I could create as being more accessible in like more ways than just what I had thought of as like price accessibility or like availability accessibility, but more like I can create pieces that are tactile. The piece can be interacted with and you don't have to have sight to experience it. And Reagan's interview response where they said, you know, yes, you're inclusive, but what does it mean? Like, just list what does it mean to have accessibility, right? And I really resonated with that, and I'm going to carry it forward in my art practice.
You here. Thank you. Yeah. If anyone has, a final thought, I am aware that we have another question in the Q&A, but I don't think we're going to have time to get to it before we close. So yeah, any last thoughts here? No. Okay. Oh, Reagan.
I just want to, this Reagan, I just want to say how grateful I am to be part of this project and to really have an artist as great as Sarah to look at the interview and really feel witnessed, even though Sarah and I have never met in person. And, you know, during the break, I was looking at the website and I can't wait to look. But I really think that this is a time where I felt very seen, and I think others may feel seen from both the arts and the interviews. And what a great project this was. Check.
You here. Thank you. We are at the end of our time. I want to read the additional question that we had because it is actually an incredible question, as were the others. Maybe people can connect about it after this event or in other spaces. But Nicole asked, are any of you approaching disability and art in a world where more people are likely to be approaching a newly disabled experience from the COVID pandemic? And I'm like, that's a brilliant question. And yes, as I said, hopefully people can connect more about it. Yeah, I don't have our social medias at the top of my head to rattle off where people can connect about it. But if you're specifically on Instagram, you can go to disact. Is it disact art or disart act? Gosh, see, this is what I was saying. I don't have it off the top of my head and it's not written down because they're so new. But thank you. Oh, Taz to the rescue again. The links to the Disability Arts and Activism Archive, social media pages, specifically Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. As much as all social media is complicated these days, they are all in the chat right now. If one of our techs could put those in the YouTube as well if they aren't already. That would be great before we close out. And again, just thank you to everyone part of this project, and thank you to everyone who showed up for this loopy, disabled launch event, because I really appreciate all of you very much. That's it. Yeah, let's see. Now, how do we end this? This is always the awkward part, isn't it?
Are we just going to end the call, or do we want to just end the webinar?
Just the webinar first. Okay. And if everyone who is not a panelist or a speaker could leave, that would actually make this ending a lot smoother, honestly, so that we don't have to figure out how to remove all of you so that we